This is from Dan Caesar, Electric Vehicles UK founder, fully charged and everything electric CEO, world leading electric home and motor expo organiser. A deal is a mutually beneficial agreement between two or more parties. A deal on an EV is not a mutually beneficial agreement for either party, because the dealer will be blowing his brains out and the customer will blow his brains out too when he comes to sell it. In my opinion, is a very good reason why a lot of people don't want to buy an EV, because of his attitude. I don't like his attitude. I've seen numerous comments that he's made to people who don't agree with him, don't want an EV, and instead, you know, being a salesman all these years, what do you think I did when somebody came in and said, oh, I don't like Vauxhalls? And people used to do that. They used to come in the showroom just to tell you they didn't like Vauxhalls or they didn't like Mercedes. I remember one guy ringing up and he says, oh, I'm just inquiring about a Mercedes SL. And I told him all about it. And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I've got a BMW 850. He says, I don't know why I'd want to change. I don't know why I'm even thinking about changing. My car does, you know, it's got so many brake horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in like 5 seconds or something. And I says to him, how long does it take for the hood to come down? And he went, oh, good point. Well, you buy an SL because it's a convertible. But the thing is, as I was saying, if, like the EV shills, if I took that attitude when I was selling vehicles and somebody came in, you fight the argument with features and benefits. You don't. I could have said to him, I mean, I was having a joke with him, but what I could have said to him was, oh, you're not educated, you know, you need educating. And immediately I'd have been at odds with him and I'd have never sold him an SL. These EV people, they talk to you like you're something they've just scraped off the bottom of the shoe. If you don't like EVs, then you're lower than low. And they're all the same. You can't agree to disagree. There has to be something wrong with you. And that's the problem. It's the EV shills, as I've said in previous videos. Get rid of all them. Get rid of them. Get rid of all the targets. If you want to sell them, incentivize the salesman. But it has to be fair. These days, the fair treatment of customers, salesmen can't tell you lies. And if I, as a salesman, tell you something, if you come to buy a car off me, and I, as a salesman, tell you something like, oh, it does 60 miles to the gallon, or it's only had one owner, it's brand new, well, pre-registered really, but whatever I say to you, the customer can come back on you and make you buy the car back if you've told a lie. These EV shills, they get away with saying any old shit. Absolutely anything. And they've got no comeback. Make them responsible for what they say. Let's see the truth then. Let's see this website that's set up just to correct EV myth information. Let's see them correct that. Let's see them say, oh, you can say 1,500 quid. Right. All right, Colin, I tell you what, if I can save 1,500 quid, I'll buy one. But if I don't, 1,500 quid comes out your wages. At the end of the year, you give me 1,500 quid. Well, in certain instances, you can say 1,500 quid. Yeah, in certain instances, if you stick a gold bar in the boot and you come to sell it, and you sell it with a gold bar in the boot, then perhaps you'll get enough money back. It's all crap. So Dan Caesar, or Dan Caesar, I'm not sure if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologise. I have seen somebody say Dan Caesar, so we'll say Dan Caesar. So Dan Caesar is a big mouthpiece for EVs. Reminder, the bulk of mainstream media are spewing BS. An alarming amount of policymakers are gobbling it up like gullible sheep. The policymakers are gullible sheep. Well, I rest my case. Hashtag cheaper, better, battery electric. Hashtag stop BS. Yes, please stop it, because this is rubbish. The Telegraph wetting itself with excitement today as it suggests that EU weakening its BEV ambitions will follow UK's leaders to collapse, Miliband isolated, as EU prepares to reverse petrol car ban. So then we go on to Colin Walker from the ECIU, Climate Intelligence Unit, in Turkey's voting for Christmas news. Again, do you see what they are? Do you see what they're like? If you disagree with them, you're a turkey. If you disagree with Colin, who, as far as I know, don't seem to have had a proper job and doesn't seem to have had any connection with the motor trade. I could be wrong. If I am, I'll hold my hands up and say I'm sorry. If you don't agree with what Colin said, you're a turkey. Is it just me that dislikes these people? Call your names. If you disagree with them, they call your names. The EU has apparently abandoned plans to introduce an effective ban on selling new cars with combustion engines in 2035. Europe appears to be giving up on helping its car industry compete with China. It can't compete with China because China's vehicles are being subsidised. They make more money selling them in the UK than they do selling them in China, apparently. Apparently there's an oversupply, or there was an oversupply of 3.5 million vehicles in China. And they're pushing them out all over the place. Apparently, they're pre-registering them in China, then deregistering them and shipping them abroad as new vehicles. That's what has been said. I have no cast iron proof of that, which is why I said apparently. So you can't compete with China. Not when all our motor trade press, for reasons best known to themselves, are bigging up Chinese vehicles and mentioning them in every flipping post they can do. And it's the same ones that get mentioned all the time. I always look for patterns. I look for patterns in buying signals, in customers, in where I advertise. I always have done. I see a pattern in these write-ups about electric vehicles from people that you wouldn't really expect, or you would hope better from people going out to the Chinese motor show, for instance. Their actual website is collapsing beneath them, but they're taking out trade envoys to China, to the motor show, and saying how fantastic they are, when it's not their place. December the 12th, commenting on rumours that the European Commission is backing away from plans to end the sale of petrol and diesel cars in 2035. The good news is that the UK doesn't need to repeat the EU's mistakes. That's what you think, is it, Colin? In your vast experience, you think that if the EU countries reverse the ban on petrol and diesels, we in England can carry on just selling EVs, just offering our customers EVs. Well, let me let you in on a little secret. Have you heard of grey imports? Have you heard of imports at all? Have you heard of Japanese imports? Well, I'm just remembering, I'm just trying to think, going back to, what year would it be? I think it was the late 80s. One of our very best customers, and a friend, a good friend, still, I would still consider him a friend today. He worked for a jewellery company. We had the Opel agency. He used to buy an Opel off us. He used to do probably 60,000 miles a year. And he used to buy an Opel record off us, built his way up. Very, very good salesman. Very good salesman. Ended up a director of the company. But we were expecting to get an order off him. He fancied a new senator. Opel Senator. And then one day he came in. I used to go out with him. Quite a lot. Got some very funny stories to tell, but I can't tell them. Next thing we know, he turned up in a Senator from somewhere else, from another garage. And do you know where the other garage was? It was in Germany. Because he could import an Opel Senator basically cheaper than we could get them off Opel in the UK. So he went abroad, all expenses, get all his petrol and expenses, arranged, went and bought a Senator. And do you know what? There was all the trim on the vehicle was damaged. It had been washed with power washers, were probably just coming out then, or really hot power washers. And it had been washed too hot, and it had matte black trim. And all the matte black had gone like rainbowy colours. And you know, when there was any warranty work needed doing on it, do you know where he went? He didn't go back to Germany. No, he came to us. We replaced every single trim on his Opel Senator. And we'd not made any profit because he bought it from Germany. And do you know what else? The service manager we had at the time was too lazy. You can imagine you had to find a trouble code, a warranty code, fill a form in for every piece of trim on that car. So do you know what he did? Instead of doing that, he hid all the trims upstairs in the parts department. And I only found it when we were clearing out, because all those parts should have been returned. If they're over a certain amount, I think it was a £5. If they're over a certain amount, they had to be returned to Opel, and they were hidden upstairs. So not only did the guy buy a car from Germany, we lost out on the profit, we had to do the warranty work, and it would have been a few £1,000s. And we didn't get paid for that either. So, you see what, Colin and Dan, you do have to match what the EU do, because otherwise the importers, they will already be looking at importing vehicles, petrol vehicles from Germany. They'll already be planning it now. If I was still in the job, I'd be looking at it now, because I know very well there'll be a great market for it. If you're getting force-fed vehicles and you don't want one, and that's your only choice, then you'll go abroad. That's what'll happen. So, what did he say? Turkey's voting for Christmas. The good news is that the UK doesn't need to repeat the EU's mistakes. Yes, it does, Colin. Yes, it does. My advice to you is keep quiet. If you don't know what you're talking about, keep quiet. They need to repeat it, and they need to repeat it quickly, because unless you're on a level playing field, it's not that far across the channel. Trust me. There'll be plenty of people making the trip, and there'll be plenty of importers making it easy for you. There'll be plenty of people bringing vehicles in. Colin again, commenting on rumours that the European Commission is backing away from the plans to end the sale of petrol and diesel cars in 2035. Colin Walker, Head of Transport at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, ECIU, said, if these changes are confirmed, they will do nothing more than keep millions of European families stuck driving dirtier and more expensive petrol cars for longer, whilst jeopardising the progress that Europe's car industry has made in making the switch to building EVs. 1. By encouraging manufacturers to become stuck producing obsolete petrol vehicles in a world that is rapidly electrifying. No, it's not. The EU is putting its car industry at considerable risk of falling behind the competition it faces from China and elsewhere. A recipe for factory closures and mass redundancies. Electric vehicles are already doing a good job of that. That's what they're doing. They are bankrupting dealers in the UK. They're bankrupting the manufacturers, everybody who's involved in them. That's what they're doing. They can only sell them by giving them away. Well, selling's the wrong word. They can only dispose of them by giving them away. That's what they're doing. They're disposing of them, not selling them. A deal is a mutually beneficial agreement between two or more parties. A deal on an EV is not a mutually beneficial agreement for either party, because the dealer will be blowing his brains out and the customer will blow his brains out too when he comes to sell it used. Have you ever wondered why there's so many cheap EVs around? Or why there's so many cheap EVs? It's because the new owner has lost a fortune. How long do you think they'll carry on doing that? Will the UK to follow suit and slow its own car industry's EV transition? Analysis suggests this could reduce the industry's economic output by 34.1 billion and see over 400,000 jobs being lost. The good news is that the UK doesn't need to repeat the EU's mistakes and could instead capitalise and develop itself as a hub for building the electric cars of the future, growing the economy and creating new jobs. 2. British EV drivers already save considerably more money in driving costs than their counterparts in Germany. Driving costs, if they can charge from home, but not running costs. Driving costs, not running costs. There's a difference. You need to calculate running costs. While the EU acts to trap its residents in petrol cars that are obsolete, they can still buy EVs, dirty and expensive to run. The UK is free to ensure that more and more of its drivers can access the savings of hundreds, if not thousands of pounds a year that come from EV ownership. That is complete tripe. They're not banning the sale of EVs. They're prolonging the sale of ICE cars. And you know as well as I do, the only reason you're frightened, if EVs were superior and everybody wanted them, they would buy them. And if everybody wanted them and they were buying them, ICE cars would die out on their own. You wouldn't need to say you can only sell them till that, but they're not, because EVs aren't significantly better. They may be better, but they're a compromise. And this moment in time, the compromise is too much for most UK motorists. And because they've rushed them, it's now coming back. It was going up, but now they've rushed them, and more people have found out that the EV dream is just that. No, sorry, it's not the EV dream, it's the EV nightmare. So more and more people are drifting back, and petrol cars prices are going up, diesel car prices are going up, EV prices are going down. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.